Hello and welcome to another edition of the Pace and Space podcast. My name is Sean Barnard here with my guy Sam Oshtry over on Pick Swap Media as usual. We got a lot to break down. It was a fighty night across the NBA as tempers were flaring all over the place. A whole lot more energy on a lot of courts outside the Philadelphia 76ers and Portland Trailblazers as that ended in an absolute blowout right there. But the trade deadline has officially settled, getting a little bit more player movement, the buyout market beginning to establish itself. We got to have a conversation about tanking. So we're going to dive into it all. Before we do so, how are we doing, my friend Sam?
I'm doing great. It's the weirdest stretch of the NBA season, and this is when a lot of people start complaining and talking about things that have nothing to do with basketball, like tanking and all that stuff, because it's always a rough stretch from like the end of January till the All-Star break. But the All-Star break's only a few days away, so let's just get there, and we have fights to break down. It's fight night in the NBA, so that's always fun.
Yeah, 100% there, and ready to dig in on that right away. So I would say maybe the craziest NBA fight of my lifetime. Do you think that's fair, Sam?
Yeah, I was going back and looking at fights and suspensions, and the Knicks Nuggets in 2006 when Carmelo was on the Nuggets at the time, and he just threw a crazy haymaker that was really a cheap shot. And hearing him talk about it decades later is pretty funny. That was a pretty wild fight. Carmelo got 15 games for that one. But other than that, you just don't see real fights, like people actually squaring up and having no control of the situation. And, I wonder where you stand on this.
Hit me.
But you're seeing a lot of people just like complain, this is awful for the league. This is terrible, this and that. It's fun. Like fighting's fun. It's entertaining. Yeah, you don't want it. If you're the league office, of course you're pissed about it. And if you're handing down these suspensions, they should be pretty big suspensions. I'm not arguing that, but this is fun. Let's stop acting like the world's falling because some guys have beef, and it just creates more storylines, creates more rivalries. If these two teams play in the playoffs, which they very well could, as a 1 seed, as an 8 seed, then that'll be even more fun. So stop everyone grandstanding and acting on your moral high horse. Fighting's fun. It's fun, and it's fun to watch.
Yeah, 100% there. And it's also, basketball is an emotional game, man. Sports get emotions stirring. If you're banging in the paint constantly and fighting with a guy, being physical, sometimes tempers flare. And that's exactly what happened last night in this matchup. I also that's kind of this Detroit Pistons mentality, man. That's what Isaiah Stewart's going to do. That's what Jalen Duren's going to do. These guys are going to get up in you, get in your face, and that's sort of how they've had success as a basketball team. So you're right. It still shouldn't happen. It still isn't a great look. I understand the NBA being offended by it, but let's dig exactly into this fight specifically. So I know you have it on your screen that you want to share right now, and I do want to follow this up after we do break down the film of this UFC-like action right here. I want to do suspension predictions for each. So I'll let you lead the charge on this video here.
Yeah, so let's just – can you see it? Can you see it?
Yep.
All right, so I can't see the screen, so you let me know where to pause, but let's just watch it, right? Let's just watch this fight. So this is one of the best angles from it.
Jalen Duren attacking in the paint, Diabate being physical, normal foul.
It's normal hard foul. Like, guys take exception. This is usually where fights end, where guys take exception to stuff like this, and they get in each other's face, and teammates break it up, and that's that. Like, this is where this stuff happens all the time, every night in the NBA, and this is where it ends. Then you see this. Let's just watch this again.
Hand.
Like, to do that to someone. I mean, there's punching and there's slapping. That is maybe the most disrespectful thing you can do to someone, to actually grab their face and just move it out of the way. It's like spitting is number one, and then this. That's like as disrespectful as it gets.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is shout out to Philadelphia Catholic League graduate there, Jalen Duren there for laying his business on the table. I will say in Jalen Duren's defense, before we dive deeper into this fight here, you see the moment where it clicks in his head of I'm too good to be doing this. I can't quite get in the mix. Isaiah Stewart does not click. Diabate does not click. But you see the moment where it kind of switches in Duren's head. It is not at this moment here.
Good shout out by you. I was actually, my last ever high school basketball game was against him when I was a senior and he was a freshman.
Wow.
Not that I was on the court for very long. I don't even know if I was on the court for the same time as him. I got on at the end of that game. But imagine if we got in this scrap, you think I would have done a Mo Diabate like thing? So look what happens. look what happens after this. So that's as disrespectful as it gets. And then Mo Diabate is just on a mission.
Took the first swing.
10 people trying to hold him back, and this was like, all right, it's over. 10 people are trying to hold him back, and he escapes. And he goes at Duren again, and then people get in front of him. I haven't seen a player get that heated in Jeremiah Fears had some dust-ups this season where it's like a lot of guys have to hold him back. But I haven't seen a player get that heat and escape all these guys in a long time. But the fight is far from over. That's the best part.
Oh yeah, still scrapping too.
So here we got Miles Bridges,
Mm-hmm.
who's like, all right, I'm standing up for my teammate. I'm going to get in Jalen Duran's face. So Miles Bridges comes over. He sends a real punch. Look at that. Loads up, makes contact too.
Got him.
Jalen Duran tries to swing back. All right, and then is the best part. That's when Isaiah Stewart's like, all right.
Break glasses, this beef stews music, running in there Royal Rumble style.
Exactly. He's like, all right, he's holding his own. Like he's gonna stay on the bench. It hasn't got crazy yet. He sees his guy, Jalen Duran, who they're really good friends, actually, him and Beef Stewart, and he comes in hot. Boom. And there's another angle too that you see on the top right of your screen. He has all these knees. He's icing his knees like guys do on the bench all the time. So he's all these knee pads on ice on his bench. And he's just coming in hot for Miles Bridges. There's guys trying to hold him back. Miles Bridges throws a haymaker back at him. They're squaring up right now.
Oh yeah.
In the top right, like, and here's the best part. When you really want to assign a winner or loser to this fight, as great as this idea that Isaiah Stewart's one of the last guys in the league you would want to mess with, which is definitely true. Miles Bridges has the upper hand in this fight. Watch this.
I'll put back on this.
Miles Bridges ducks him. You can't really see all that well. Miles Bridges ducks him like he's Floyd Mayweather in his prime.
He does.
And then goes back at him and tackles him. And then they're on top of each other, UFC style.
Stewart's hitting him with the elbow on those, though.
Exactly. And then they need everyone to break him up. Just an all-time stuff from this fight. One of the best fights that you'll see in a long time. And you won't see that for a while, but like that's real heated rivalry. Not to reference that show, Heated Rivalry, but that's a real heated rivalry that's brewing.
Different kind of show.
Yeah, this was anything but that show, Heated Rivalry.
Yeah. I do want to. I'll say, Isaiah Stewart, man, like that's what you do. Like I understand he's going to take a fat suspension for this. There's no doubt. I do want to do the suspension predictions. You're also kind of like a fraud if you don't do that in your Isaiah Stewart. This is exactly what you're supposed to do. Like I appreciate. I know it's a cardinal sin that you cannot get off the bench, and he is going to pay for that. But at the same time, that's your role on this team, man. I think everyone in that locker room appreciated it a little bit. So Beef Stew, he was itching for that moment. I can't believe Ron Holland didn't get in the mix. By the way, I thought he had to be itching in that one.
Yeah, seriously. And Beef Stewart's like, he's always known as like this enforcer and just like this tough guy back up big. He's having an unbelievably great season. He's a part of this Pistons resurgence or emergence, whatever you want to call it. He's been incredible as a backup center, but also when him and Durant share the floor sometimes. Like he's been great as a finisher around the rim. He's an unbelievable screen setter, but he in the pick and roll, him and Cade run it really well. When he's with the second unit, he runs it well too. Like Isaiah Stewart is not just some tough guy enforcer for this team anymore. He's a real impact player, part of their rotation. So this is going to be a pretty big loss for them. I know you want to try to guess the suspensions. Well, what do you got?
Let's phrase it two ways. So I want to say what we think the NBA will come down with, and if you were Adam Silver right now, what would the suspension be? So to lay it out this way, my prediction, I think Stewart gets 15 games here. That's my NBA prediction. My Sean Bernard prediction, I'm throwing him 3 for this one. That you got to punish.
If you were the commissioner, you throw him 3.
Yeah, I will acknowledge the point that the fact that it's Miles Bridges in this didn't maybe infiltrate my mind a little bit there. But I kind of have partial to that's Beef Stew doing his thing, man. So I think Bridges probably catches a 5-game suspension. I think Stewart probably catches a 15-game suspension. Diabate probably in the 5-ish range, and Duran maybe a game. I would say a game for Duran, 5. I'll go a game for Duran, 3 for Diabate, 5 for Bridges, and 15 for Stewart would be my guess.
So I mean, I like the 3, but the thing is, like, because everything I was talking about earlier, but you have to set a precedent for this because it can't be okay moving forward if you're the league office. And it's funny because the old, I forget what the exact title is for the guy who hands down the suspensions, but like the director of basketball, something for the NBA, it was Joe Dumars.
Yeah, right.
Obviously was part of that original bad boy Pistons squad. And it was funny when he was handing out all these suspensions to everybody because it was like for fighting, because he was a guy who got into so many fights. But now he's moved on to the Pelicans as their president of basketball operations. So it's James Jones now, who's the executive for the Suns for a while, and obviously a teammate of LeBron, won championships with LeBron too. So he's the guy who hands down these suspensions. He's the player discipline guy, whatever his actual title is. I think Beef Stewart is going to get 12 games.
Okay.
I don't think quite the 15 range, but I could see that too. Like 12 to 15 wouldn't be crazy. I think Miles Bridges is around 10, maybe 8 to 10. And then I would go 5 each for Duran and Mo Diabate. Maybe less for Duran, and honestly, like 3 for Duran, because he put his hand on him first, but that was it from him, really.
Yeah.
Diabate was a guy who was really running at him for a good 15, 20 seconds. So I think he'll get at least 5. But these are going to be hefty suspensions. I'm surprised they haven't been announced yet. We're almost 24 hours later. I would have thought they would have been announced.
Yeah, and I won't lie. I was unfortunately the YouTube TV clicker had Bucks and Magic on TV for me while this was happening. I was doing the quad box, watching a little college ball as well. I did not see the lead up to what brought this to happen. Do you know the context? Was it anything more than them just being physical and all of a sudden tempers flare?
Yeah, I wasn't watching it live. I went back and watched some of this game after, and like those two guys were going at it all night. Like Mo Diabate and Jalen Duren were going at it all night. It's just a lot of physicality, a lot of fouls. I mean, Pistons lead the NBA in fouls.
Which they were referencing on that very clip, by the way.
Yeah, like and that's like part of their identity too. It's not like they're stupid fouls; like they want to hard foul you. So they lead. They get called for the most fouls in the NBA, and it was just a physical game. Anytime you play the Pistons, it's going to be physical. And I think that was just frustrating. Mo Diabate, and you see that hard foul there, and then it's just two guys getting each other's faces. And Duran puts his hand, like I said, in his face, which is one of the more disrespectful things you can do in a fight, and everything escalates from there. Just two really physical teams who've been playing really great basketball. I mean, this was a matchup that everybody was looking forward to, because it was the best team in the East, the Pistons, who were the top seed, and the Hornets, who had won 9 straight, the most since 1998-99 season. And it was like, all right, these two Eastern Conference juggernauts over the last couple months are clashing. This was a game everybody's watching, and it just turned into the Paul Reed show in the end. B-Ball Paul.
Shout out to B-Ball Paul, man. Still kicking, still doing his thing. He had a very funny quote after the fact too. He was asked about it, and he was, I'll paraphrase, I can't get it as poetic as B-Ball Paul so officially does, but it was something along the lines of, we're all brothers, we all got each other's back, but at the same time, we just can't crash out over things like that, which is, shout out to B-Ball Paul, man, an absolute poet right there. But let's keep it on the Charlotte Hornets a little bit. Are the Hornets legit, Sam Oshtry, that this team is winning games left and right? The best net rating, I believe it's the best net rating in the league over the past month for their starting lineup right there. Seeing what Concanipple has connected on this team, LaMelo Ball playing a little bit more winning basketball, Brandon Miller, the guy that I think a lot of people forgot about, Miles Bridges, they're quietly very deep right there. Are you buying what the Hornets are selling right now?
Completely buying it. And you even saw it in glimpses early on in the season.
Yeah.
They were just losing a lot because of the injuries. But when this group, and it was really the 3-man lineup of LaMelo Ball, Concanipple, and Brandon Miller, when those 3 guys were actually on the floor together, their net rating was unbelievable. It was as good as any 3-man lineup in the league for the first couple months of the season, but it wasn't producing wins because Brandon Miller was in and out of the lineup a lot. LaMelo had some injuries. Miles Bridges was in and out. Mo Diabate was also in and out, didn't get his footing. Ryan Kalkbrenner was playing a lot of big, and he's a really good backup big in this league too. Obviously a rookie, still getting his footing under him. But now, like, LaMelo Ball is playing some of the most controlled, selfless basketball of his entire career. He knows, he's finally recognized he has a really talented team around him, and he's making an effort to not take ridiculous shots. Like, his shot selection has been so much better. He's making an effort to get Concanipple touches.
Yeah.
He's obviously Brandon Miller, when he's out there, he's been a really good scorer too. Miles Bridges is always been, I mean, everyone hates him for good reason. I mean, I'm not telling anyone to be a fan of Miles Bridges or get his jersey, but he is a really underrated basketball player, just in terms of basketball, because of all the other
max
stuff.
Contract guy before all this stuff.
Yeah, but because of all the other stuff, people kind of forget that because they don't want him to be a good basketball player. But he is a really good basketball player. He's a perfect complement for playing that 4 position alongside Brandon Miller, Concanipple, and LaMelo Ball. So this team is legit. I mean, when you look at the East landscape, and I believe they're the 10th seed right now, but they really could get up to that 9-8 seed range. when the season's all said and done, especially with the direction some of the teams like the Heat and the Bulls and Hawks and some of these other teams are going in. The Hornets are building something. And all these discussions about trade rumors with LaMelo Ball, maybe you sell high on him in the offseason. That's a conversation for down the line. But this is a real team that's building something. And Con Knippel's at the center of it. Like, you talk about a guy who's a rookie who can impact winning at his level because of the gravity that he has, not just as an off-ball shooter, but as a constant mover and relocator, and as a pick and roll playmaker. He's great, and how much he can do with such limited dribbles and his touches. Like, wherever he is, his touches are the most efficient touches in the NBA. In my mind, second in the NBA in made threes. He can play on the ball. He can play off the ball. He's a much better defender than I think people would have expected. Everyone's like, all right, everyone's going to target him every time. You can't really target him. He's a bigger guard. Yeah, he's exactly strong. He's not particularly quick laterally, but he's holding his own against good on-ball creators. And so it's all about Con Knippel. Like, he's really the best player on this team for me. Like, over LaMelo Ball, over Brandon Miller. And in terms of his future, it's going to be the brightest. But they're building something. And yeah, I mean, when you talk about real this season, are they going to win a playoff series? Probably not. No, because they'll have to play the 2 or 1 seed if they actually make the playoffs from the play-in tournament. But for their future and what Charles Lee has implemented them and how fast they play and the pace they play with, yeah, like this team is legit and they've arrived in the East.
Yeah, and I like Charles Lee as well. I think that he's got like a good feel for this team. I like that he got thrown out yesterday, has shown a little bit of fire, a little bit of spark himself as well. And I think that he is like teaching this team to be about the right things. They're laying the foundation for something that this will be kind of the launch point this year. I don't expect them to make any sort of postseason noise, but I think it'll be a really good experience if they can push for that play-in slot and get a little bit of experience. To this point, I think LaMelo Ball has 2 play-in games in his career and no postseason action. So having a chance to kind of season it a little bit, I think would be really beneficial for the team. But I am buying what the Hornets are selling. I'm pretty encouraged. And I think this is probably the best the organization should feel than has been the case in probably 20 years, to be perfectly honest, for as far as what their outlook is moving forward with all that young talent. So shout out to the Hornets right there.
Yeah, they're one, I don't want to call it kryptonite, but problem, and you saw it last night with 18 turnovers, was they turn the ball over too often, and that's Brandon Miller sometimes, that's LaMelo Ball being careless at times, but they've been one of the best rebounding team in the NBA over the last 15 games, offensively and defensively, so they're getting a lot of extra possessions through the offensive glass, and Brandon Miller's also become really underrated, where he is a 3-level scorer and one of the smoothest scorers in the NBA, where he can get to the rim, finish at the rim effectively, shoot over guys in the midi. He's obviously has a good pull-up 3-ball too. Pretty good handle for his size. Like, obviously, there's a lot of Kevin Durant in him, and that was the comparison coming out of the draft, even though he said his favorite player was Paul George. But he does have that smoothness to his game that both those guys had in their prime and still have to a degree. So there's a lot to love about this Charlotte squad.
Yeah, everyone knew Brandon Miller was a shooter since college, Sam Oshtry. I think that was very, very evident right there.
Nice reference there.
Yeah, I do want to swing it over, and I appreciate our guy Rob chiming in the comments here. We're not going to dive too deep into Sixers talk today. They were absolutely blown out by the Portland Trailblazers last night, but a couple of moves at the bottom of the roster for guys that I consider my guys, being Marjon Beauchamp and Dalen Terry there. So the initial question that he brings up, and shout out to Rob once again, do you think Dalen Terry has a chance to earn a standard contract? He said, I heard Dalen Terry is a versatile defender that can run point from Google. Even if he can just defend at a high level, I still think that would be valuable. We don't have many wings with PG out, and sometimes I feel like we need a little better defense. And I'll start by saying I thought Beauchamp gave a really nice burst last night. It was obviously in garbage time that I think you got to grade that slightly differently, but I think he finished with 8 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists, and I thought there was like a legitimate athletic pop there. As far as Dalen Terry, this was a dude I was all about back in the draft, and he really popped to me at that Arizona team, which was really good. Benedict Mathurin, a key part of that team, Christian Koloko, Pell Larson. So 3 like legitimate NBA guys that stuck around. And what he was to that roster was very much like the connective tissue. He's also very much like a good vibes guy. Like, he's got a little bit of the Jared McCain, Tyrese Maxey type attitude where he's always screaming, vocal, smiling out on the court. I like Dalen Terry. He strikes me as a Nick Nurse kind of guy. He's 6'6". He's a good defender. He's never going to be like an offense first guy, but I don't think they need him to be. So I am optimistic, and I do think there's a legitimate chance that Terry could earn a standard deal here.
I think he could too. Bounced around quite a bit during this trade deadline.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Like, I mean, it's not that he's got much of a role, and I don't expect him to have much of a role in any team moving forward, but he is a really good defender. And like you said, kind of like a bigger wing. So I'm a fan of him too. I think he could definitely stick around.
Yeah, I like Dalen Terry. I've been rooting for him. It was a bummer to me that he was unable to kind of crack that rotation out there in Chicago, but I don't really grade that too difficult against him, considering guys like Ayo Dosunmu and Kobe White are pretty fair reasons to be sort of stuck on the bench. And his 3-point shot has improved, man. Like, that's going to be a major swing skill. He shot below, I think he shot below 26% his first 2 years in the league. He's shooting 42% this year, shot 36% last year. If that is real, if this shooting leap is real, and I will note it's on higher volume these past 2 years, which is encouraging to me, that's something that I think like changes the trajectory of him as a player. So I think it's absolutely worth a swing. It's another example to me of Daryl Morey approaching these two-way contracts with a slightly different mentality as pretty much any other team in the league, that generally NBA teams take this as guys they don't believe are quite NBA ready. They sort of want to keep around to develop. Morey takes the opposite of approach. He wants guys that are on the tail end of if they're even eligible with as much NBA experience as you can bring in. And guys are going to push for minutes. We've seen it with guys like Jeff Downing. We saw it with Dominic Barlow this year. And I think Dalen Terry fits in that exact same category. Beauchamp, I would argue the same thing. So as much as I've been critical of Daryl Morey of late, and I think that there are fair criticisms to the top of the roster, I do think he does an excellent job loading up these two-way slots there. So a little hat tip to Daryl, I guess.
Does he got to keep his job because he got Dalen Terry on a two-way?
To be determined. To be determined on that one. I will note Jared McCain 5 points in his first 2 possessions down the floor last night for the Oklahoma City Thunder. You hear his nickname?
One more bucket the rest of the game.
Yeah. You hear his nickname out there in OKC?
I have not.
Lightning McCain.
Nice.
Yeah, really I kind of like it.
Really original.
Yeah, I kind of like it though. I won't
Who
lie.
was it? Oh, I saw a Jason Williams clip, like killing him.
The TikTok.
Not that I take a second of a stock in that.
Yeah, I will say I do like Jason Williams, but yeah, the TikTok stuff I think is very much overblown at this point. I've said most of my piece about Jared McCain here. I guess to bring it up a little bit, now that the dust has settled, the deal has been made, the rest of the trade deadline has come and gone. Do you feel any differently than you did about that initial trade? Because I still feel mostly the same.
No, I don't feel any different. I think you came around to me more than I came around to you, where originally you and a lot of people were saying that this was financially motivated. And I was absolutely of the mindset that this was not financially motivated at all. And people were saying they did this to duck the tax, which I said not the case at all. They did not do this to duck the tax. They wanted to duck the tax, which, by the way, has become not just a Sixers issue, a league-wide issue that's like really concerning, where how many teams now, and the owners have benefited from this new CBA more than anybody, but how many teams are prioritizing more than anything, more than player acquisition, is ducking the tax at the deadline. And now you're only seven teams are over the luxury tax after this trade deadline. Usually it's like half the league. So it's not just the Sixers and Daryl Morey, but Josh Harris has never wanted to pay the tax. I digress. But the whole point of that was they were never using the Jared McCain deal to duck the tax. They wanted to duck the tax. They also wanted to move on from Jared McCain. So they got rid of Jared McCain, and a way to accomplish ducking the tax was that they had this deal for Jared McCain because they wanted to move off of him for a move to make now, to move to make later, an asset, whatever the reason was. So we can disagree about the future of Jared McCain and whether we like the return or not, whether he's Daryl Morey and the Sixers sold high on him. But I don't think there's a disagreement, which it seems like you came around on to me based on your good story in Crossing Broad about that they didn't do this to duck the tax.
Yeah, appreciate the compliment there. I'll say this, like, this is how I think it went down, like, to lead to it is the Sixers sat there and they were under the qualifications of they have to get under the luxury tax. So that was the orders from the boss man, Josh Harris. And Daryl Morey mapped out all the possible ways you can do this. And I believe trading Jared McCain was one of those options that came on the board. And then when you begin to call around and get that offer, that he decided that's a price point that he's happy with. And then it became independent of this. When Daryl spoke, it became abundantly clear that he just believes that is good value, which I wholeheartedly disagree with. So I guess the conversation has shifted to, I basically take all the blame away from Josh Harris and throw it entirely onto Daryl Morey. I don't think this was being cheap as an organization. I think this was bad general managing by Daryl Morey is sort of how I feel still.
My whole thing is that these are two separate issues that everyone was combining together. You can be furious with ownership for continuously not paying the tax.
Yeah.
And that is more than fair. Be
Yeah.
furious at ownership. But don't be furious at ownership for trading Jared McCain because they had to deduct the tax.
Sure.
That's just simply inaccurate, which I called out from the second it happened, that everybody was saying. They had a million ways, as we've both pointed out, to duck the tax, and they easily could have done it without trading Jared McCain. Once you identify that you want to trade Jared McCain, that's just a natural way to duck the tax. But if they didn't want to trade Jared McCain, if they thought Jared McCain was a guy they wanted to keep around and part of the future and the present, they would have found other ways to duck the tax. That was my whole point the other time. And yes, whether they got good value back for him, I think they did sell high on him. I don't think Jared McCain was part of the Sixers' future. I don't think he has any bearings on the how this Sixers team plays out this year or beyond. So I thought it was a good move, but that's something we can disagree on, not whether this was financially incentive.
Yeah, and lucky us got to watch 19 minutes of Kyle Lowry clumpy flumping up and down the floor last night. Dude,
man, he's getting to man, I'm blanking on his name right now. He's a Mavs assist. Oh, Jared Dudley. He's getting to Jared Dudley level range where it's like, this guy deserves to be my pickup run more than he does being on an NBA court, the way he moves out there. Yeah. And that's what I was noticing yesterday. Yes, I mean, we had to watch Kyle Lowry. They weren't winning that game no matter what because their entire rotation was out. Jared McCain would not have made a difference. But in our pregame show, I said this is a scheduled loss, especially when all those injuries come. And that's what it turned out to be.
I was going to go Raymond Felton for the shout right there, but same kind of mindset there. The last point that I'll bring up about McCain, Daryl's comment of saying, I'm quite confident we sold high, only time will tell. I hate like every part about that. Like, I understand he's defending the move. Even if you're right, dude, that's just kind of like a scumbaggy thing to say. And for Jared to then be asked, like Daryl said that, and like I don't even know what he could have replied. He basically was just like, yeah, like, I don't know, and laughed it off. But like I do think Daryl, even at this stage of his career, could use some more polish for the actual human being side of things. And I think that was lost in this overall transaction, the way he went about it.
I think like you're right, but that's never been Daryl's mojo. Like
Sure.
There's not a lot of empathy or pathos in his
Yeah.
approach. He's very cutthroat. And I do think there's a balance there. Like you have to be cutthroat. You also want the more personable side. The question that he was asked was, why did you do this now as opposed to why couldn't you wait till the summer? Why couldn't you like if you didn't have a deal in place, which was a good question.
Yeah.
And he was giving his reasoning. So I don't like see it as disrespect necessarily. I believe him. And that was like the one, and I thought this before he even said that, but that was like the one honest moment in the press conference I felt like where he was like, I truly, like, I promise you, however he phrased it, that we sold high. And we can debate that, but I didn't think it was like some disrespect. I thought it was kind of like explaining why he did that at that time, and he was answering the question. They still got a first round pick back. It's not like
barely.
He got it's not like he was a salary dump. Like Jared McCain wasn't a salary dump here. That's like disrespectful for a player if you're just a salary dump and you're like, oh yeah, we sold high and there was no value for him. They still got a first round pick back. So I didn't think it was like super disrespectful. And I saw Jared McCain's reaction, of course, and they were posing it to him like it was disrespectful. I'm not so sure.
I felt disrespectful. I mean, like, I understand that's not his intention in the quote. Like, Daryl's for sure back against the wall, sort of defending himself a little bit. But what he's saying, what he means in this quote is that Jared McCain as a basketball player will never be worth. He will never be worth at this point or in the future more than what that trade return is what Daryl is saying. That's what he means by I'm selling high right there. And that's like a kind of mean thing to say about Jared McCain, to be perfect.
Yeah, but he's worth a first round pick.
But that's a lesser pick than what you drafted him last year.
Yeah, that's another point of disagreement for us because I don't agree with that. He was the 16th pick.
Yes. And what pick is this going to be? And what selection is this going to be?
He was not all, as you said to me.
Sure.
Not all draft picks and drafts are created equal. He was the 16th pick in the worst NBA draft we've maybe ever seen. That's what it was considered.
That's not true. That's not true.
You know for a fact everybody was saying that at the time.
Zachary Risacher was the number one pick like 4 years ago, man.
That was the same draft.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. It was that draft. I was like, am I losing it for a second? So it was that draft. And do you remember, like everybody was saying the number one pick in this draft in that draft would have been the 8th pick in most typical drafts. And it was Zachary Risache. So if you really use that calculation, it's like if Jerry McCain was 16th pick in that draft, in most drafts, he probably would have been in the low to mid 20s. And that's what that pick is going to be. So I didn't think it was like some crazy disrespect. And people kind of need to remember that context when just saying, oh, he's a 16th pick. We're not going to have the 16th pick. Context in every draft matters. This is supposed to be a really good and really deep draft.
That was a bad slip by me, but I will rephrase this. If it was a redraft, where does Jared McCain go right now?
You got to read me some names. I don't, probably way higher, but I don't.
Like, he's no doubt a top 5 pick, I think.
Give me the top 10 in that draft.
Risache, Alex Sarr, Reed Shepard, Stephon Castle, Ron Holland, Tijan Salon, Klingon, Dillingham, Edey, Cody Williams, Matas Buzelis, Nikola Topic, Devin Carter, Bub Carringham, Khalil Ware. It's kind of a that is the top 15 picks.
Yeah, probably. I mean, Buzelis certainly would have gone higher. Klingon would have gone higher. Obviously, Stephon Castle and Alex Sarr are awesome. Reed Shepard would still be in that top 3 range. Yeah, I mean, of course, I don't disagree with that, but I'm just saying at the time of that pick, like he can outperform his draft slot for that draft. But at the time of that pick, in most drafts, that would have been an equivalent of a mid to low 20s pick.
Which is what they got out of this deal.
So that's what I'm saying. So it's a similar draft slot. That doesn't mean that player's going to be good or as good as McCain, but maybe he'll fill a different role. And they might not even use that player still. They can still use it as an asset to trade in the summer.
Yeah. And I also, by the way, I guess I'll hang up with, I still stand by the point of, you can't sell me on this from any direction as a franchise. I hear you about value. Like, I know that's how Daryl got here and making the decision, but it's one of two mindsets going to the trade deadline. It's either you believe this team is good enough and you make a win now move. If there was a player coming back in return, my tone would be entirely different about this trade. That's not what happened. You just traded away a guy who can at least potentially help this team for no player, for just draft picks. So either you believe this team is good enough, which Daryl continues to either lie on the stand or just state out there if he actually does believe it, and you didn't get them any help, or this team is not good enough. And then why are you punting on a 21-year-old kid in his second season if this is in sort of a rebuild right here? So I just can't get behind the mindset in either direction.
I don't think he doesn't think this team is good enough.
Then act like it. Like the whole, well, we planned on repackaging the picks for assets. That means nothing to me, dude. Like, that, you didn't. It's a results-based world that we live in. You either have something lined up before you click send and accept on this deal, or don't talk like that. It's kind of how I feel.
But if you think your team presently constructed is good enough, you don't necessarily need to be buyers of the deadline. Yeah, you want to look for a deal, which I do think they were looking for a deal, and there were other players out there that they were interested in, and just the deal didn't work out. But I think when he says this team is good enough, they're the same team. So if he believed that team is good enough, he believes that the team after the deadline was good enough. Because whatever you say about the Jerry McCain deal, they didn't get worse. They certainly didn't get any better at the deadline, but they also didn't get any worse because Jerry McCain was not playing a second in the playoffs, or was not going to be part of a playoff rotation when healthy. And if one of their guards were out, then they were screwed anyway. So that's the calculation to me, which I think is a logical one.
I don't like that mindset of like, we're screwed anybody. So anyway, so obviously if Tyrese Maxey gets hurt, like this team probably is not going anywhere. But I still think you should have a backup plan, man. Like, what do you think, if I'm to set the over under right now for how many playoff minutes Kyle Lowry will play? That answer isn't 0.
I mean, you better hope it's 0.
But like, seriously, we will see Kyle Lowry playoff minutes. I think we will now.
The only way that happens if there's a major injury. He's not playing a single minute.
Man.
If Grimes, Tyrese Maxey, and VGH come in all healthy, he's not playing a single minute. That is more than enough to run with your backcourt. At least 2 of those guys, Trent Watford, maybe getting some PG reps. Like, there's almost no scenario where he plays unless it's dire situation because of injuries.
There certainly shouldn't be, but I kind of think that there's a decent chance. Maybe they're just keeping this dude fresh all year, man. Maybe that's the whole.
He didn't look fresh last night. Didn't really work.
He did not. No, he did not. All right, let's slide into this conversation, certainly related to the draft conversation, about tanking overall. I think you wanted to refine exactly what your take was, as you and I had a little bit of a disagreement. We've kind of touched on this in our previous podcast as well in the pregame show last night. But state your case, Sam. Where are you coming at from this tanking angle?
So I'm pretty torn on it, and I'd love to hear your thoughts because, yes, tanking is a problem, and it's not good for the NBA. It's not fun where we have this weird situation this year where literally a third of the league, and we can go through the teams, but a third of the league are tanking and trying to lose games. And even before the All-Star break, which you see it in late March, sure, but not this early. But at the same time, I don't think it's that big of a deal that people are making it out to be, because I think this is a very unique year for the tank where you have all these teams that in the future won't be looking to tank, when you have like the Wizards, Jazz. Both those teams made all-in moves at the deadline. So presumably they shouldn't be tanking next season. You have the Pacers, who in a weird year with the Tyrese Halliburton Achilles injury forced them into a losing year. You lose Miles Turner too. You're into the tank. You're going to be back competing next year. Teams like the Mavs, they don't want to tank forever when you have a guy like Cooper Flag. You hope that they make a step, and they have a ton of cap space to work with, and hopefully a good pick in this draft. Team like the Nets can't tank next year because they don't have any other first-round draft picks after this year. So they have to really force into the tank. So there's teams where they're putting so much pressure on this pick, like the Wizards, the Jazz. Those two teams both have top 8 protected picks, and they're going into win now mode no matter what next season. So they are putting so much pressure into this draft. The Pacers, they have a top 4 protected pick, and they're back into win now mode this year. So that's a ton of pressure into this year's draft. We talked about the Mavs. They want to start competing with Cooper Flag, so they want to pick as good as possible in this draft for a potential superstar to pair with Cooper Flag. So that's a lot of pressure on this draft. And then you have the Nets, who more than anybody need a top pick because they don't have a young superstar, even though they had 5 first-round picks last year's draft. They didn't get anybody, even though Igor Demon's been playing much better, but they didn't get much. So,
I was going to say, your boy's been hooping a little bit.
Yeah, he has been. He still can't get to the hoop, but he's definitely been playing a lot better, and he's been good from 3. So the Nets are putting all in to the draft basket this year. So I just think it's a really unique situation where all these factors are coming down from all these different angles, forcing teams into putting a ton of pressure into this draft. And then you add on top the fact that this is one of the best drafts we've seen in a long time and one of the deepest drafts we've seen in a long time. So it's setting up to be an all-time tank run, but I wouldn't overreact to this season where it's going to get ugly and the takes are going to be flying, but I don't think it's some like epidemic like I've been reading about in the NBA right now. That's kind of where I am on the tank situation.
Yeah, I definitely think we largely have approached this conversation from different angles here. Like, I think I come from the root belief that pretty much no matter what the NBA does, you're not going to fix this. That I think that the code has sort of been cracked by NBA franchises here, that when you do get a Cooper Flag or a Victor Wembanyama, or what you can run down the list of when you get a player of that caliber, it changes your franchise for the next decade plus, man. And when it is so hard, especially when you are a minor market team, if you're a Charlotte Hornets or a Brooklyn Nets or Utah Jazz, you're not going to be able to sign the top tier free agents. You're just not. Like, that's never going to happen right there. So this is sort of your only pathway to making it happen.
But I do want to say that's a stupid and bad approach. It just is if you're an NBA organization, because
why?
Because the chances of you getting those talents are so slim. Think about everything that had to happen for the Mavs over the last year. For them to land in the situation they did, to have a 2% chance.
Not 2% chance. Not a fair example, because they like the Luka thing. We have to start there when having the Mavs context.
Okay, but that's true. But then even like the Spurs, who have had absurd lottery luck, but the Spurs, for them to land number 1 pick in the lottery, where it was a generational prospect in Victor Wembanyama, the chances of that are still like 5%. You're not putting yourself in the best position if you continuously do that. Like even a team like the Wizards, which I think they haven't had that success and that luck in the draft, which is what forced them to make some of these all-in moves and start competing now, especially when there's pressure from the ownership. When they had the number 2 pick, it was the worst draft ever. Now I think Alex Sarr is a really good player, but they had the number 2 pick in an awful draft. So even if you get that lottery luck, you're not necessarily surefire hitting on a prospect or in a great draft. So I think it's just a stupid and bad approach with the flattened odds, and it just gives yourself a really small chance of winning. So I don't think tanking is the answer. I think it's a pretty stupid approach since the lottery odds have been flattened.
I'm a child of the process here. That
it's different. They changed those rules because of the process. Like the Sixers were always going to have a top pick in those drafts.
It certainly is different now from that mentality, especially like Sam. I will be a Sam Hinkie guy forever, and do truthfully believe that if he was allowed the opportunity to see out his vision, if the NBA didn't directly screw the Sixers over by putting the the Colangelos in there, who had no idea how to run a basketball franchise despite their experience there, and were too busy talking crap on burners than actually doing their job right there, we feel very differently about how the world of Philadelphia basketball would look like. Now, speaking in today's terms, the other thing that I think gets overlooked in that context is like all the work that was put in to collect all these draft picks. And that was done by Sam Hinkie without having a guy that, can launch point. Like you look at the Thunder of having a Paul George that you can trade and get that collection of picks. It's really hard. I think it very much depends on like who you are as an organization. I get it from the Jazz. I get it from the Wizards. I get it from the Nets. If you're a team like the Miami Heat, it is in your best interest to hang in that middle ground and wait till that star wants to come down. So I think every team has a little bit different blueprint. And by the way, the Heat haven't had any luck in that conversation any recent years either, despite being connected to all these. So I kind of view it that if you are one of these small market franchises, this is kind of your only pathway to getting one of the blue chip guys.
But it's still such an unlikely pathway to doing that because
More likely than zero, though.
Yeah, but free agency isn't even really a thing anymore. So, like the days of the big three teaming up in Miami, that's over. Yes, when a Giannis or a KD comes available, he's not going to have the Utah Jazz on his trade destination wish list, but you can acquire assets and flip those guys for a player like Jaren Jackson Jr., like an all-star level player, defensive player of the year guy. Like that's smart team building, and that's what they've done when they haven't had the lottery luck that other teams have had. And I don't think you could take it from the Sixers approach because what Sam Hinkie did was really smart. I mean, he was way ahead of his time, and he was brilliant because it was like, we don't want to be at the middle. We're going to tank to the absolute bottom and find ways to acquire this draft capital and then be as bad as possible and give us a bunch of different bites at the apple where we're going to have these top 3 picks every single year. And one of them is going to be a franchise level player. And one of them was in Joel Embiid. So and even though they had a lot of busts along the way.
That's what I was going to point out. Yeah. Like that's while also factoring Markelle Fultz, whose shoulder stopped working, Ben Simmons, whose basketball brain stopped working. Like you run down the list of Mikal Bridges, who they traded for Zaire Smith, who literally almost died due to a peanut allergy there. The Landry Shamits. You can run down the list of guys that just were not what you needed them to be. Dario Saric, who we had all this conversation, like
100%, and that's why it works so well because they were going to have a top 3 pick in every single draft, and they had a lot more misses. I mean, think about how many top picks they had with Jahlil Okafor, Embiid, Ben Simmons, Markelle Fultz, all these guys, and most of them were misses, and there was really one huge hit. You could say Ben Simmons is kind of a hit, but one huge hit, and that's why it worked because you were always going to have a top 3 pick in the draft. That's not the case anymore. You can't be as bad as possible. There's no team where every single year they're that awful and they're always going to have a top 3 pick. The Spurs got absurdly lucky with their lottery luck for 3 straight seasons where they did have or they had the 1, then they had the 4, and then they had the 2. But still, like they didn't have. You're never going to have what the Sixers had. It's impossible to replicate because the NBA implemented these rules to avoid having another Sixers scenario. So Sam Hinkie had the right approach. But you can't have that approach anymore because the rules have changed. It's just stupid to rely on the lottery now. It's not the same.
Yeah, think about their 2 number 1 overall picks are each out of the NBA by the time they're 28 years old, which is just depressing right there in Markelle Fultz and Ben Simmons. So should the NBA act on this? Obviously, the integrity of the sport is the number 1 thing, and these are teams that are directly trying. I mean, last night, the Utah Jazz pulling Jaren Jackson Jr. and Lauri Markkanen into the 4th quarter. And by the way, still won that game. The Miami Heat, the quote after the fact from Bam Adebayo saying, we got to figure out how to win games even when opposing teams are trying to lose is a bit of a tough one there. Do you have a problem with that from the Jazz perspective of actively taking out your best players in the 4th quarter, directly, basically throwing games? Is that an issue?
Well, not from the Jazz perspective. It's smart from the Jazz perspective. I don't understand why teams are so upset. The Jazz need to lose as much as possible to put themselves in the best position to get a draft pick.
From the NBA's perspective.
Yeah, so from the NBA's perspective, I wouldn't do anything drastic for everything that I talked about earlier, where I view this as a very unique year where there's a lot of teams who are putting a lot of pressure on the 2026 draft. And the Jazz are one of those teams because they have a top 8 protected pick, because they bought in on their team and traded for Jaren Jackson, where they're in all in mode next season. So this is their last bite at the apple for a top pick in the draft. So they have to lose. So, and there's a lot of teams like that who are putting pressure on this draft. So I think it's a weird year for tanking, where a third of the league is tanking. It's going to get ugly. So it's going to come up in the competition committee because of that. But I wouldn't do anything drastic if I'm the NBA right now. I actually think the lottery and the flattened odds has shown teams that if you're going to be a team that simply only relies on lottery luck, you are going, and just to build your team, you are going to fail. You are not going to be a good team that can build for the future, because that's not how the lottery works. So I actually think the league's approach was right. There's just a lot of teams that haven't figured that out yet, that it's stupid team building. But you wouldn't have the situation like the Jazz and Wizards are in right now, where they haven't had a lot of good lottery luck, and now they're going all in next season after one more bite at the apple this season. So that's because they can't just tank forever and be awful forever and hope to get a top pick. That's just not, you're just going to be terrible forever, and that's not the right approach anymore with the flattened odds. So I don't think the NBA should step in. The one thing that you can do is get rid of pick protections in the lottery.
Yeah, I don't like this idea.
But the thing is, it solves some of the issues, because that's all the teams you're talking about right now who are tanking an absurd amount. Like the Jazz and the Wizards are right there at the top because they have top 8 protected picks. They need those top 8 protected picks. They have to make sure they land in the top 8 of this draft, or else they go somewhere else. Same with the Pacers. They have a top 4 protected pick. They need to have one of the worst records in the league to hope to keep or hope that pick lands in the top 4 so they can keep it. So as much as you can say that you don't like getting rid of pick protections, that's the cause and the root of a lot of this tanking that we're seeing right now.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. Like the Sixers are a prime example of it last year. I just kind of think like that's sort of, it's also, I think teams do it more like hedging their bet than it is like actively trying to manipulate things. Like the Sixers last year, that stemmed from the Al Horford deal, is when that pick protection was on there. It was thought that there is no chance that this team is not a playoff team. Why would they, or why wouldn't they be a playoff team? They have been in the past 7-8 years, whatever the case is right there. And then everything that could go wrong did go wrong. The Sixers didn't tank last year. They didn't. They
did that once the calculation shifted. They did in the last month and a half of the season. They shut everybody down. Of course they did.
But even that, like, dude, there were real injuries. Like Joel Embiid was never healthy last year.
Yeah,
like
but Paul George and Maxey got shut down too by the end.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like they what did they start the year? 3-11, I think was.
Obviously they were awful, and that happens every year, where it just calculations change based on how the season goes, and it's huge injuries. But they made it pretty egregious in the last month of the season because of that protection. So it wouldn't have been as ugly. They could have maybe developed the young guys more, even though Jared McCain was hurt. Everybody was hurt, but it wouldn't have been that ugly as it was in the last month of the season if that pick protection didn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, you're right about that. But at the end of the day, the same calculation that all these teams are going to come to. VJ Edgecombe was worth how horrible last year was. Like,
yeah, but that's my point. That's why I don't blame the teams at all.
Yeah. So I guess my only like critique that I have is I think it's super lame that like the Sixers felt like they were under a microscope for this versus teams like the Jazz do just keep getting away with this, can do whatever. I do find it more offensive for them to do what they're doing right now, which is benching all your best players in the fourth quarter, than the Sixers, who were rolling out a roster of like non-NBA players for a season. Shout out to Tony Roten and all the other guys that did TV Fired Up back then, for all the Brandon Davies, the KJ McDaniels, the Henry Sims, the Hollis Thompsons. We can go down the list of these process legends right there. But that, to me, it wasn't like the goal of that actual on-court product was finding which these guys can stick around, which these guys are actual NBA players, giving guys like TJ McConnell chances right there. I don't really love it from the Jazz tone of we're just going to be competitive for 3 quarters and then tank the fourth to lose intentionally.
If the pick protection didn't exist, where they didn't have a top 8 protected pick, they wouldn't be doing this egregiously. That's the only reason they're doing that. Because then it would just be like your odds would change. If you win a couple more games or 3 more games than you should, your odds would change by a percentage point in terms of, all right, we got the 9th pick. We were going to get the 8th pick. What's the big deal? You can't have that now. Like you have to make sure that you're a top. And how it works, by the way, is if the Jazz are one of the 3 worst records in the NBA, then they automatically keep that pick, because the worst pick they can get is the 5th pick in the draft. And if they have the 2nd worst record in the NBA, the worst pick they can get is the 6th pick in the draft. If they have the 3rd worst record in the NBA, the worst pick they can get is the 7th pick in the draft. So they need to have one of the 3 worst records in the NBA, or else it's up to chance.
Yeah.
And if they're the 4th worst record in the NBA, there's a chance or the 5th worst, there's a chance they could actually lose that pick. So it is so important for them to have one of the 3 worst records in the NBA. And same with the Wizards, because they also have a top 8 protected pick. So it's all because of the protections. That's the cause of it. That's the root of this all. So if you really have a problem with it, get rid of pick protections, at least in the lottery.
I mean, you're right to an extent, but I also think it's still about, like, we can call it pick protections. We can call it just maximizing your chances of getting the top pick. Like, the Pacers are a team that obviously made the correlation to that this is a 4-player draft. That's where we'll cap out our protections. We obviously hope for the best with this, which is a crazy risk to take the more that I do kind of digest that overall over there. But at the same time, it comes down to, like, the Sixers were doing this and maximizing this when there was no, like, protection standpoint. They were doing this because
but they had a 25% chance of getting the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah.
That's a 1 in every 4 chance of getting the number 1 overall pick. Now, if you have the top pick in the draft, then that's just a 14% chance of
so you
getting
think
the top
that changes the mentality that much?
Absolutely.
Really?
I absolutely think it does. I don't think you're seeing tanking egregiously from teams to get to be the 1st seed or the worst record versus the 3rd worst record, even the 3rd worst record versus the 4th worst record. I don't think you're seeing tanking that egregiously from those type of teams. You're seeing it from the teams who have the pick protections where they need to have one of the worst records, or else they're in jeopardy of losing their pick, or a situation like the Nets who don't have their pick in 2027. So they need to have the top pick as high as possible in 2026. So you're seeing it because of the certain situations they're playing out. I don't think it's just smart. It's smart. And I don't think teams are really doing it as, oh yeah, we're just going to try to lose as much as possible, because we've seen time and time again, the worst records in the NBA don't get the top picks.
Can I throw out one more fix for an idea right here?
Here.
No NBA draft lottery. Why do it? If these teams want to be that bad, that's fine.
Well, no, because then you really, the tank would be absurd.
But I'm not sure, because we're seeing these teams do it year after year because they're not rewarded. Like, and it would come and go with flows. Like the Victor Wembanyama year would be insane to see some of the lineup decisions and what teams do put out there. But I also kind of think, like, the reason that this is so prevalent, that we see the likes of the Wizards, the Nets, the Jazz, all these teams continue to be in that mix, is because they never get the guy. They never have a chance at getting the dude.
And that's why their approach, they've realized that now, and it's taken a few years, but that's why their approach has changed and shifted to, we can't just hope for the lottery anymore. And we have to start building players and accumulating players that can help us win now with the young core we have drafted. I don't think that necessarily would fix everything you're saying, because number one, what if it's an awful draft? Like the Hawks, who got the number 1 overall pick in that terrible draft with Zachary Risichet, that doesn't fix their problems. That's not some franchise guy. What if you get the 3rd pick in the draft and you're an awful team and it's just you whiff on the 3rd guy? It's not as obvious as it was last year when the top 4 were all great players. So, I wouldn't love that approach. The only way you could really do that is if, fine, you want to be awful for 1 year, but you have no chance of getting a top 5 pick. If you draft in the top 5 the season before, you have no chance of drafting the top 5 the season after. Your best pick can be 6. That would be a potential fix, because then teams can't lose. But again, that would be a little unfair to me, because it could just be an awful draft. You're terrible the year it's an awful draft. It's there's not going to be a foolproof solution. That's just why I actually believe the solution we have in place right now, where there's flattened odds and you don't necessarily get rewarded for having one of the worst records, is working. Like it's not, I don't want to say it's working necessarily, but if you're a smart team, it's not a problem to me. If you're a smart team, you're not going to go all in on losing every single season, because you're not necessarily going to be rewarded with a top pick in the draft. You are going to have to go all in losing if you have a top 8 4 protected pick, whatever it is, because you have to ensure you actually keep that pick. That's where the problem stems from.
It's interesting. I am curious to see if the NBA does tweak it anymore. I do think I will agree with you in the standpoint of, I think there's far more conversation about it being a problem than it actually being a problem like that. So we'll see. If you are on the clock right now with the 1st overall pick, are you still drafting Darren Peterson?
I think so. That text message was crazy yesterday.
Yeah, that was crazy. Do you see them getting chewed out for it too?
The guy, yes, I did see that. But it's not his fault. Like, it's just ridiculous society we live in, where you're sending a text somewhat discreetly and you can be filmed, you can be posted and go viral. I mean,
I would have been freaking out to the guys right behind him. I would have turned around and being like, "You're obviously the dude that took this video."
Yeah. Like, what can you do? I mean, they don't know him. What are you gonna do? Punch him?
Yeah, fair.
um, yeah, I would still take Darren Peterson, and I understand. The hamstring thing is one thing. I'm not that concerned with the hamstring thing
The
because
least of
people.
my concern.
What's that?
That's the least of my
Yeah,
concern.
but I think that's something that'll be addressed where it's like, is the hamstring thing something that could linger into his NBA season? Could cut his career short? We see guys miss a lot of time with hamstring things. He could really just opt out in the entire season and say, I have this hamstring thing that's lingering. I'm out on the entire season. I'm focusing on getting ready for the NBA draft. And if there wasn't the NIL and all the money he was getting paid to actually play for Kansas this season, I wouldn't necessarily even have a problem with that in the old school college basketball day. That's fine. But now I would have a huge problem with that based on Kansas actually paying him to suit up and play. So you better play injured and all that. I would still draft the number one overall because I think the talent is so unbelievable. I mean, he is one of the best guards we will see enter the league in who knows how long. I mean, the Kobe comparisons you're hearing, he's such a smooth shot maker, clutch shot maker, difficult shot making, get to any spot on the floor, rise up, unbelievable finisher, his athleticism. I mean, he is a surefire prospect from a talent perspective. So I would still take the chance. And I don't like, you're obviously hearing stuff about the mentals and his mentality. I don't know. I would obviously question him rigorously. Whoever has that first overall pick, you got to get a lot of people in that room, ask all types of questions, a lot of sports psychologists in that room, figure out how this guy is really wired before you're going to let him lead your franchise. But based on the talent, that's at least what we know, what we can see, what he puts on the floor, which is the most important resume you can put together. He would still be the number one overall pick to me.
Yeah, he's no doubt the most talented player in this class in my mind. That it is like there's a level of polish and a level of just smoothness to his game that is so rare to see at the collegiate level, and it's really impressive. And when he's going, man, there's no doubt about it. But at the same time, like he's missed 11 of 24 games this year, including basically all the big dog games. He missed against UConn. He missed last night against Arizona. Missed against Duke. In last night's game, he was warming up, looked completely healthy, and then all of a sudden was a scratch like 10 minutes before the game. My honest gut feeling here is this is a situation where there's whether it's an agent or whether it's a dude representing him or whatever the case is, whatever the title is there. I think there's a guy that is probably, maybe calling shots a bit above his head here that I think they could pay for. And I do think for Peterson directly, I'll just say, like, player-wise, the closest thing it reminds me of is Kyrie Irving. Now, Kyrie had real injuries that he did deal with right here, but he barely played college basketball, and it was like, are we really taking this kid first overall? And we've seen what Kyrie Irving has turned into. I do believe in him as a talent. I also think there's a non-zero chance this dude just is not built to be is not built to care about basketball at the rate that he needs to.
If it's an agent thing, then I'm not concerned. That would be good for me if I'm drafting him, because that's something you can address once you get him into a franchise, less people in a year, less things to worry about. So that's something I wouldn't be concerned about. We saw with Ace Bailey, he cut ties with his representation. So I don't know if that's the case, but that would be a positive for me rather than, okay, is he actually not wired right? Is he not, does he not love basketball? Does he not have that mentality that you need? Which I'm not saying he doesn't. I don't know. I don't know the answers to these questions.
Right.
That's what a franchise has to figure out. I was thinking about Kyrie too. I was also thinking about Anthony Edwards, because a lot of people forget when Anthony Edwards was coming out of the draft, this guy acted like he did not care about basketball one bit. He was like, I don't even like basketball. I don't watch basketball. Baseball is my favorite sport. Like, he was just trashing basketball. And there was all this conversation, which is hilarious to think about now and such an afterthought now. But these were questions being asked. Does this guy care about basketball? Those were takes being thrown out. Is he really going to work hard enough, as hard as he needs to? And does he love basketball? And that's the most ridiculous thing now. One of the hardest workers in the league has become one of the best players in the NBA. So it's always something that I wouldn't necessarily listen to just because the public's saying it. But I don't know. I don't know the answer. But the talent alone is so unbelievable. Way better than AJ DeBansta. Way better than Carlos Boozer. And those are two pretty surefire prospects too for other reasons. I would just take a chance on this guy.
I probably would right now, push comes to shove, but this is one of the situations that I mostly like brushed off for most of the year, where now it's like, okay, there has to be like a legitimate eye kept on this. I do think the interviews are going to matter for how that goes down in that room, and we'll see. Ultimately, like, he could prove me wrong that he could suit up for every game the rest of the year, and then all of a sudden my mouth shuts a little bit. But the track record is not great for the games that he has missed.
I will say that he's definitely he is the huge favorite to be first overall. For a franchise not to draft him first overall would tell you a lot because I think it's a no-brainer from a talent, skill, basketball perspective. It's a no-brainer. So if a franchise really digs deep into him, and hopefully they don't overthink it, whatever team gets the number 1 overall pick, but that would be tell you a lot if a franchise doesn't take him overall. And maybe there's a fit thing, like maybe if you're the Pacers, you'd rather. I mean, even though you have a 4, maybe you'd want Cameron Boozer 2 to play the 3 alongside Pascal Siakam and Zubac. Who knows who will get the first overall pick? But fit is irrelevant when you're talking about a player like Darren Peterson.
Yeah, and we'll bookmark that for now. But I did want to bring that up and have the conversation because I think I've hit my peak point of okay. Now I'm starting to get concerned a little bit about this. So we'll see how that does shake out. You got any final thoughts for today, Sam Oshtry?
I don't think so. Well, a couple more days before the All-Star break. I guess we'll talk a little bit about All-Star weekend, those fields. And I was surprised you didn't come in hot with a Brandon Ingram over Joel Embiid for the All-Star game take. Save it for Thursday.
I think, I mean, there's a part of me that's what are we doing? Like, I like Brandon Ingram. He's had a good year. I also think that there's a huge benefit to Joel sitting at home this weekend and getting some time off. So I'm not that fired up about it, but it is ridiculous at the same time.
Yeah, we'll talk about all-star stuff, 3-point contest, break that stuff down. Maybe well, it'll be at the break, so we'll give some mid-season awards and all that stuff. But yeah, keep it moving in this league, this great league we call the NBA that's never fails to entertain.
Yep, 100% there. So appreciate everyone for locking in today. Make sure you're smashing that subscribe button wherever you're listening at. Dropping a like, giving us a follow on socials at Sean_Bernard1 at S Oshtry below. Appreciate you guys for tuning in one more time. We'll be back. Talk with you next time. Peace.